the rent, a certain percent of it payable to the landlord, and then a certain percent payable to us. So they would have to write two checks. Most team members are 40 or 50% inefficient because they're wasting time. If somebody wants to get a process software but they don't have someone to implement it, then that's an easy no. Don't do that because you're just going to be wasting money. And an AI maintenance company is going to significantly increase the amount of units that one person can coordinate the maintenance on. I took those two things, I loaded them into our AI, Betty, and Betty gave me a detailed analysis on their revenue per unit, their direct labor efficiency ratio, where the opportunities are.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Evernest Property Management Show. I am your host, Spencer Sutton, and I'm here solo. Matthew is not here. He's on vacation. I got an empty chair beside me. However, I do have a special guest. I have Jay Berube with me, who is one of the founders of BetterWho. Jay, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, what's up, Spencer? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you and excited to jump in and talk about a lot of things related to business, AI. But first, I want to read your bio just so everybody listening has an idea of your experience and who you are. And listen, I know that you're on the NARPM circuit, so I know that a lot of people in our industry know you already, but I'm going to do it anyway. So, Jay is a seasoned coach and consultant with over 2 decades of experience in property management and real estate, with a track record of 1,400 homes sold and the management of over 3,000 properties. Jay brings unparalleled insights into the industry. His experience extends to cutting-edge technology, including ChatGPT and AI, which we're going to be talking about today, making him a leader in leveraging technology for business success. Known for boosting team performance, lead generation, and strategic planning, Jay empowers clients to overcome challenges and achieve remarkable results. All right, Jay, that's a mouthful right there, and I'm looking forward to diving in. But what I'm really interested in, I mean, listen, I read somewhere else that you went in 24 months, you went from 0 to 350 doors, which is quite remarkable. And then I'm reading here, you've been a part of managing over 3,000 doors, 1,400 homes sold. You've got a lot of real estate experience. So tell me how you got into the business.
Yeah, it's wild. It's funny. I've always said that property management is the sanitation business of real estate. It's down and dirty, but if you put in the work, you can build a solid business, scalable and sellable, valuable. Brokerage doesn't really provide that in most cases. Back in, it was about 25 years ago or so now, moved from Massachusetts to Southwest Florida. And this was back in the heyday. So I guess it was about 20 years ago. Back in the heyday, speculators, we were selling homes, new construction homes to investors in the Northeast and Midwest. We would put little classified ads in the newspaper, and we would get calls. People would put down a down payment on new construction and either assign the contract or close it and flip it. Well, the music stopped, and all of a sudden, there was a lot of owners, people that were stuck with properties that needed to do something with them and had no clue. So I asked somebody if they wanted to take a chance and rent it out. I hadn't done it before, and either had they. So we went on that journey, and then quickly that grew us to 350 doors in those first 2 years.
So those 350 doors were down there in Florida, and they were essentially, somebody had bought them for an investment. Like, I remember those days, Jay. Like, I remember I was working with a wealth manager at the time. This is before I got into real estate, but I just remember how hot all of that beach real estate was. And so we were just looking for, like, contracts on condos that weren't built yet, because you heard all the stories about people just flipping those contracts. But what you're saying is you grew that 350 because a lot of people like had those properties and they had to close on them, and they just didn't, like, they weren't living there, so they needed to rent them. Now, were these long-term rentals, or were they like short-term vacation type rentals? What was it back then?
Yeah, all long term. Basically, speculators, people that had not owned other properties or maybe owned one or two, and I grew it through realtor referrals. So I had a handful of people that I had under contract, and then I realized like this was a magic formula, and it's not easy. So not all other realtors wanted to do this. So we got a ton of referrals. I would say about 90% of those were realtor referrals.
Yeah, that was I'm sure a heyday for realtor referrals, because everybody was looking to, obviously when you're selling property, you're making that nice commission, but there's a grind in property management that that a lot of people just don't want to deal with, or they're not equipped to deal with. So talk a little bit about. You said, like in some things I was reading, you're like, you've made more mistakes than most people. So what are some of the mistakes you made early on as you were growing your company?
Yeah, well, I mean, mistake number one when we were growing. So we would have the tenant mail us to our office the rent, a certain percent of it payable to the landlord, and then a certain percent payable to us. So they would have to write two checks. And then I would have, my front desk person mail the check that was the 85% payable to the owner, and then deposit ours. Massive inefficiencies and liabilities. Like, I didn't know any better. I mean, I was just a kid at the time, just trying to stay afloat. So, I mean, God, so many mistakes as far as doing things the wrong way. Systems, like I didn't have the right team in place. It wasn't scalable. Honestly, I was just trying to stay afloat. I didn't even know if I was profitable, but I knew that I was making money. And I did that for a while.
Yeah, that reminds me of Matthew. When I first started talking to Matthew about joining the team back in 2014, he was just like, accounting was his weak spot. And so he was just like, man, I just know that we have money in the bank every month. So that's what you do when you're young and just trying to grow. I mean, obviously we don't manage that way anymore. But you hit on something. You hit on like efficiency is a big problem. And I'm guessing with as many clients as you have at BetterWho, with as many management companies that you consult for, inefficiency is a big deal. So talk a little bit more about that. Like, how do you see PMs struggle with efficiency even today?
Yes, one of my favorite topics. Let's look at profitability first. So the way that most people look at profit is through income and expenses. Well, what if we looked through the lens of efficiency? And efficiency in terms of how it relates to people or process. It's like when you have a bottleneck in the business, like, okay, is it a people issue or a process issue? Well, we find that most process in business has massive inefficiencies, especially as things change. And then people, right? So let's say the average everyday small operator that, they're putting out fires. There's just, it's hard to organize their time. What they thought they were going to do didn't end up happening. They're not working on the business like they want to, and they're working in the business. Well, if that's happening to the business owner, they typically have a blind side for the team, thinking that the team doesn't have those problems, but they do. Most team members are 40 or 50% inefficient because they're wasting time, duplicated efforts. Like, there's just so much opportunity there. And when you can dial in that efficiency, it's going to directly relate to the bottom line.
Can you give me an example of like the inefficiency that an owner might find in his team?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example of an owner and one of their key players they were duplicating efforts, doing the same thing. They were double checking each other's work, right? So that they didn't make mistakes, rather than focusing on having the right systems in place. They would go out and do inspections on properties together instead of outsourcing those inspections, but because they, it was in a dangerous area. And I get that, right? But at the same time, outsourcing those inspections is probably the better decision. But when you're in it all the time, it's so hard to take a step back and be like, okay, how do I solve this problem holistically? Because every decision that we make, it has a ripple effect. It affects everything else in the business. And I find that, and we fall into this trap too sometimes. So that's why awareness is important. We'll try to solve one problem, but not take into consideration how it affects everything else. And sometimes that problem that we're trying to solve isn't really the root problem that needs to be fixed.
So how do you get down to the root?
Yeah. We do it through what we call our 4-pillar approach. So companies, when they come to us, they might think that they want to grow, or they might not know what the problem is. But what we know is that, think of a pyramid. At the foundation, before we get to the 4 pillars, is leadership. And by leadership, I mean capacity. That's the first thing that we have to solve for. So when people first start with us in a coaching or consulting capacity, we have them do a time study in 15-minute increments. And this creates massive awareness. And we reduce that down to how much of that time were you spending in the business, on the business, or on yourself, but also a lot of key insights to where they're wasting time. So capacity, but also, like with leadership, delegation, right? Like there's a lot of things on the leadership aspect. And then the first pillar is team. You have to have the right people in the right seats doing the right things first. And then we move on to systems and processes, right? Making sure that we have the right systems in place, profitability, dialing in on unit metrics, and then growth. So we go into those 4 different pillars, and we diagnose by just asking a lot of questions. Curiosity, that was one of my key words for 2024. Curiosity is so important, especially when you're leading a team. Being curious. Hey, why'd you make that mistake? Why did you decide to do that? When you can ask better questions to the people that are on your team, you're going to get better results.
Yeah, no, those are great points. I mean, and thinking about the foundation being leadership, are you like? And you mentioned capacity. Does that mean capacity to lead others, or does it mean time capacity to lead others? Because one thing that that we talk about around here is just like hiring the right people. So that would go into team, which is the next pillar. But the person who leads has to have the capacity. Like they have to get it, they have to want it, and they have the capacity to do it. Is that more what you're talking about in that capacity mode? Like I would imagine some business owners have been doing it so much themselves in the business that it's hard to let go and let somebody else to do it, because they think, well, nobody's going to do it like I do it. So maybe expand a little bit more on that leadership aspect.
Yeah, so exactly. That was the delegation part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like not wanting to let go. So delegation and time, right? So making sure that they can manage their time properly, stop doing the things that aren't important, right? That someone else should do. So for example, let's say it's a real small operator, under 100 doors, and they don't have anybody. Well, the first thing they should do is write down all of the things that are not worth their time and that they don't like doing, because they should operate within their superpower, right? What they're passionate about and what they're talented and where their talent lies. So all of those things that they don't like doing, that's their first job description, right? But when we first get into business, we don't plan on being HR managers or leaders. Like the skills that thinking that the team doesn't have those problems, but they do. Most team members are 40 or 50% inefficient because they're wasting time. Questions to yourself as well. Like, I'll tell you, one of our core values is learn fast. And I learn so fast when I am parenting, when I'm coaching, when I'm trying to be a better husband. Like, just by me asking questions and helping other people, I'm like, oh wait, I see how this applies to this type of situation.
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with being very self-aware. and so if you have a goal, like I want to lead my team well, then you need to be assessing yourself, asking the right questions, to your point. And I love the idea about delegating. So I believe it's in EOS for Life, which is a book written. It's like traction. And if you're running EOS, you should read EOS for Life because it talks about delegate and elevate. And so that's one of the things I did this past year is I sat down and I wrote down, to your point, I wrote down everything that I like doing or I love doing and I'm good at, but I also wrote down things that I'm good at, but I don't like doing, and things that I'm not good at and I'm still doing. Like, what are these? Why in the world am I doing all this stuff? And the crazy thing was when I showed it to Kayleen, who's our director of marketing, I walked her through all of my things. She was like, well, I love to do that. And that these things are on your list. I actually like to do these. And so we get this idea that nobody wants to do the things that we hate and we don't want to do, but that's not necessarily the case, because when you have another leader who's wired differently and gifted differently, you can pass a lot of those things on. And to your point, really kind of focus on your superpower, and that person can focus on theirs as well. All right, so talk about, we have this is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. We have a core value here called own the outcome. And you talk about moving people from task doers to outcome owners. So what does that shift look like in real life for people? And how do you get people to actually own the outcome?
Yeah, great question. And the first and the best answer to that is just like when you're onboarding a new owner, you set the expectation of what that relationship's going to be like within the first 30 to 90 days. Like if you take care of them, you do a really good job in those first 30 days, like now they know you delivered on the promise that you made to them. They know they know what to expect, that they're going to get a certain level of service. And now for the remainder of the lifetime of that client, it's going to be smooth sailing for the most part. And it affects everything, right? It affects your labor, it affects your unit metrics, all the good things that we care about. Well, it's the same thing with a team member. As soon as you bring on a new team member, most people, I don't want to say most people, but we commonly find that onboarding is very challenging in the companies that we work with. And we help solve that problem. Our business, BetterWho, initially we started just with remote team member direct hire placement. So that was, our core. When we bring someone on into your company, those first 90 days, setting the expectations, like, for example, most business owners, I'll say most on this, think that they have to sit down and train someone, like, I got to train them and it's going to, do you really? Or if you have the resources, whether or not you have the resources of what they need for their position, if you have given them their role, responsibilities, requirements, and results, and they have alignment on that, and they know the expectation, right? This is where I want you to be in the next 90 days. Put together a plan on how you are going to achieve that, and what are the steps, the milestones, and by when. Now that person is able to start thinking critically, right? And think outcome oriented. okay, this is where I need to be in 90 days. So for example, you hire a maintenance coordinator. I want you to be handling the maintenance independently for the 300 properties within 90 days. So where do you need to be in 30? Where do you need to be in 60? And then what do you need? Who do you need to pull in? Similar to like you were talking about EOS before. That's essentially our consulting was built off of the EOS platform because my business partner was an EOS implementer. And when I saw what he was doing one-on-one with businesses, I said, look, we need to put a system behind that, and we need to be able to deliver this to a lot more property management companies without trading your time for dollars. So a lot of these core concepts are applicable in EOS or in what we do as well.
Yeah, we found that as you're training people, we try to set people's, and I agree with you. We give them what we call a scorecard, and we're like, hey, here are the deliverables over the next 3 to 6 months, and then we just tell them this is all about reps and context, and you're not going to know, you're not going to have, like, it's just going to take you time. You're going to put in the reps, and then the more you hear the language. So sometimes we may feel as leaders that we're saying the same thing over and over and over again, but we have to understand, like, we have new people joining all the time. So it's those are the reps that they need to hear, they need to experience before they really get up to speed, because they can come in and be super overwhelmed. Right. And if they have a poor onboarding experience, it's rough. But if you set their mind at ease and say, hey, listen, if you just follow the process, to use a Nick Saban term, follow the process, then over time, listen, you're going to catch on. And if they're smart, then they can turn into excellent team players. All right. So let's talk about AI, because, we've talked about it some on the podcast. We've had a few different guests, and we've just talked about, hey, what are potential use cases? We're using it obviously in the marketing department. It's being used a little bit in the operations. We have our own software that we're building that's going to have AI in it. So talk a little bit about how you see AI changing or do you see AI changing our industry? I mean, you've spoken about AI from at different NARPM events, but would love your insight on what you're seeing today, best uses for AI.
Yeah, there's it's obviously taking a while for people to figure out, how do I do this? Whether it's a business owner figuring out what tools they need or how to cascade that and it relates to your property management company, it's very confusing, right?
Especially when you have so many coming out all of the time, right? So if you follow any kind of newsletters, any AI newsletters, there's new tools every single week that are coming. You're like, well, which ones do I use?
Yeah, for most people, it's just a distraction and it's confusing and it's a pain point. Like, I can imagine if I step outside of my role and what I know, I'd be like, I don't even want to hear about this. Like, I just want to stay nose down because I have the problems that existed yesterday that I need to solve. People do things for one of two reasons, either to move towards pleasure or to move away from pain. So AI, that would be pleasure, right? More efficiency and, that you have to do the thing. But the pain is the pain points that you've been experiencing. So AI is typically a distraction for most people. They implement it with strategy and they know exactly what to do. So I'll give you an example. We were talking about this earlier. I just did for our group coaching and masterminds, I did a 1 hour workshop on AI as it relates to a specific function in your business, and connected this is the tool that you need. This is the prompt that you need, right? Just created one master prompt, and we're going to do this together. And even people that have all right, so my wife, she's wonderful, awesome, right? But she's not so good at spreadsheets and calendars and a lot of tech. you know? There were several people like her that were in this group, and they, at the end of the 1 hour, they had a 90-day owner onboarding experience mapped out with scripts, email templates, text messages, all in their own brand voice, Like, so it sounded like them, not, I hope this email finds you well, like none of that stuff. And written in a way that makes the most sense. Like, people don't want to read a long email, like owners don't. I mean, nobody really does, right? So these emails are designed to like be short and punchy, right? Have the bullet points with the things that are important, when to include a video, when not to include a video, focused on the main pain points that the owner experiences. Like, for example, they get their first proceeds, and they're like, whoa, I was expecting more money than this, right? Every single person's heard that before. Well, if there's a video that goes out prior to that walks them through, this is what to expect when you get your first proceeds, right? Like those types of things, to anticipate those issues and, I guess, handle the objections before you even get them. That's one practical way to use AI. So having a formula on how it can solve a problem, relating it back to talking about owning the outcome. The outcome part of that is what we're looking at. If we can identify the outcome first, then that will help us remove distractions. Thinking of a road trip, right? This is applicable with AI or anything else. And I use this on like most of my first coaching calls. You have a road trip, you want to get from Alabama to Colorado. Well, you want to get there by when? And where do you need to stop along the way? What obstacles might get in the way of doing that? Thinking through that in the right way, what resources I might need to pull in. If you can shift your mindset and your team's mindset to start thinking that way, whether it's AI or just revising a process in your business or gaining some time back, you'll be able to do that because you're outcome focused. And then you can reverse engineer, just step back and do the things that you need to do to get there.
That's great information. Jay, how do you coach property management owners to like help them get through all the noise? Because like we mentioned, there's a ton of new apps coming out all the time. How do you help them really? Because you talk a lot about removing distractions. A lot of it can be distracting. How do you help them determine what's best for their business?
Yeah, great question. First, I tell them stop. Anything that you're planning on buying or implementing or any of the things. So like after a conference or after a speaking event, we'll typically have a lot of people sign up, start working with us. And also what happens at those events are all the shiny objects are out there to get distracted by. So, I tell them like, stop, don't do any of those things yet. And as a coaching consultant and a team of coaching consultants that work with us, like we know how to diagnose, right? So we take a step back and we're like, look, let's look at the problems that you have. Let's solve for what needs to be solved now. Let's set your goals of where you want to be. So let's say in 12 months from now, how many doors or how much revenue or profitability, right? So just putting a couple of key indicators. And for some people, it's not either of those, but for a lot of people, like, that is a goal. And then we walk back to see what problems do we have that exist. And we do it by asking questions, like, okay, where are you spending your time right now? Where do you think you should be spending your time? Who else do you have on the team, right? Like we get a lot of information from companies so we can help them then do the right things at the right time. If they don't have if somebody wants to get a process software but they don't have someone to implement it, then that's an easy no. Don't do that because you're just going to be wasting money.
Right.
So diagnosing by being curious and asking the right questions.
Do you ever see a time when AI takes over like people's roles? And I mean, we've actually talked about on the podcast, just like autonomous cars, driving our what we call PMTs, property management techs, to houses, allowing them to do other work while they're driving out there because it's all full self-driving. But do you see a time when, like, hey, in real estate, specifically property management, AI is going to start replacing people?
It's happening slowly, but it's not necessarily replacing people. It's more of a divide. So think of like how the middle class divide just it keeps getting worse, right? You have more rich and you have more poor. It's the same thing with people, right? Like the cream of the crop, your great people, the outcome owners, they're going to have a seat, but the people that are the task doers that don't really add that much value, that can't think strategically, like those people, well, there's going to be less room for them, and the roles will shift. So it's just going to be different because, for example, you have a company like that does AI maintenance. And an AI maintenance company is going to significantly increase the amount of units that one person can coordinate the maintenance on because there's AI involved. So instead of having one human being for 300 doors, that one human being will be able to handle, say, 700 or 800 doors because AI is going to do a lot of that lift. We'll see different roles coming up. Like, for example, what we believe we're going to see is an escalation manager. So AI is handling certain functions, but then when something gets escalated, right, that's where the escalation manager comes in. So it's shifting the way that we do work. It's not necessarily replacing us. We use AI as a co-pilot. Talk about efficiency. Holy crap. Efficiency and deliverability. Like I just provided, I got a P&L from a new client and I had my discovery call recording. I took those two things, I loaded them into our AI, Betty, and Betty gave me a detailed analysis on their revenue per unit, their direct labor efficiency ratio, where the opportunities are, what the first things are that we have to look at to start fixing profitability wise, but then also within roles and how to get them more efficient in that matter. And then we broke it down into the next steps that we need to take. That would have taken me, I don't know, like probably 30 hours a couple of years ago. But now I can do that after 1 hour of actual talk time with somebody.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
The knowledge is so important. When you have the knowledge, when you have the documented knowledge, which most business owners don't have when we first start working with them. Like, so a big fail point, let's talk about software and adopting software as a shiny object. Well, when you adopt a new software, they need knowledge. They need certain standards of how you do business. They need your policies around that, right? There has to be SOPs, but many business owners don't have that. So if you have a way to where you can systematically document your policies and your SOPs, then it makes it much easier and much more effective to get onboarded to a new software. And you're not wasting money if you have the right who in place. You're actually, you're on the right path in that case.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was even thinking if you have people on your team that aren't so great at critical thinking or strategic thinking, AI can actually help them with that. If they just know the right questions to ask, AI can actually help them become better critical thinkers. Because I think that is an issue in our industry, especially when you. Let's just say you've had a property manager in a role for a certain time and then they leave to go do something else and you put a new person in the role that doesn't have any PM experience. Like there's a lot of ways that AI could help them like get ahead as opposed to waiting 6 months till they go through the pain of all the learning that dealing with owners and dealing with residents gives you.
You want to hear something crazy?
Yeah.
2 years ago, my business partner Matthew and I, we were at a VRMA event, and we don't typically step into the short-term rental space. This was new for us, so we didn't know what to expect. So we had Claude, which is, for those who don't know, it's like similar to ChatGPT. We had Claude up, and we're asking questions about the audience and the pain points and the previous conferences. And Claude's given us these answers that I'm like, oh, wow, these are home runs. This sounds great. And then Matthew's like, dude, I'm calling BS, man. This one we learned that AI will flat out lie to you. So we called it out, and immediately Claude's like, oh my God, I am so sorry. I was not I didn't get that information from anywhere. I made it up. And we're like, are you serious? So at that time, we had realized, with the challenges of AI currently, and that you have to train it right and give it the right information, and also the fact that most business owners for their companies, they don't have documented standard ways of doing business. We started on this journey to solve that problem. And at NARPM National, which is coming up, depending on when this podcast release, NARPM National this year, we are introducing BettyWho. And BettyWho is our AI solution for property managers, where she will ask all the questions. BettyWho asks you all of the questions to help document your policies, and she'll do it in a way to where it's, she'll do owner and unit onboarding first, right? And then she'll do communication. So just the different areas of your business. And then when she documents that, she stores it. And then instead of your team interrupting the business owner and saying, oh yeah, hey Jay, how do I do this? Don't ask me, ask Betty. Because now they have Betty at their disposal, and they can just ask her questions and she'll give them the answer, right? What do I do when a tenant's late on rent? What do I send them? Can you write me the email? And all of this is done to your company's standards, the way that you do business specifically, which is super exciting. We've been working on this for 2 years now, and it's finally done.
Yeah, that's great. That's exciting, because that's going back to what I said about reps and context. That will help your people get reps and context without having to bother you all the time, right? Without having somebody to sit there and pull out the process manual. When we first started, Matthew had just a big notebook that he was keeping all the processes in and writing them down. And he said whenever on a Saturday, he'd come in and work on the business. And on the business meant writing a process that he didn't want to do anymore and turning it over to somebody else. And so you can speed that up and have people learn through BettyWho. Is that right?
Yeah, BettyWho.
That's awesome. Well, Jay, this has been fantastic, man. Where can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about how to engage with BetterWho, how to hire you all as consultants, and where can they get in touch with you?
Yep. Either go to betterwho.com, or if you want, you can shoot me an email, jay@betterwho.com. If you have a question, I get to do what I love now, which is fantastic. We have a team. We have 21 people. We've grown a lot in the past 4 years. And fortunately, we've done it the right way. So I get to do what I love to do and help business owners solve your problems.
Well, that's fantastic. All right, everybody, that's it for this episode of the Evernest Property Management Show. We'll be back next week with a new episode.